Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about Vue.js, so let's get into it. So basically the question has floated around a few times what I feel about Vue.js, and I've made a few videos about these different SPA frameworks. And I will state the same thing in this video as I've stated in most of the other videos, which is basically that I don't really have a strong preference between the different frameworks that are relevant today because quite a lot of people get really religious about this stuff. I have my preferences, of course, based on my experiences, and other people have experiences and preferences in accordance with whatever they've gone through. But when it comes to Vue.js, it's a similar sort of well, let's just walk through kinda my thoughts around Vue, and that is basically that my argument as to why Vue.js today has a relevancy has basically to do more with the fact that it is a freestanding framework, not owned by one of the big corporations, as opposed to it having something to bring to the table that isn't already being brought by another framework. Just let me explain. You see, one of the big benefits that a lot of people argue when it comes to Vue is how easy it is to get started, that it has a simplicity to it, if you will, which is a lot of the, well, I'm not going to say, well, some of the criticism that goes into things such as, say, React is that it's very hard to set up, it's hard to get started. What's JSX and all this transpiling that needs to happen, all this stuff, and this is absolutely true. It's not a very beginner-friendly type of thing to wrap your head around if you're absolute starting out kind of fresh, right? But Vue, on the other hand, is fairly easy because it's very similar to, well, it doesn't really require much of you. You can basically just add it to a page if you want, because there's no magic transpiling necessary if you just want to get started. But the same thing is true for, say, Angular. And this is the thing that I've always found interesting about the people who really press and argue that Vue is the way to go, and that's the thing. But from my perspective, the differences between Angular and Vue are almost non-existent. They are literally approaching the SPA problem from the same perspective. They do it in a slightly different way. There are concepts within Angular that aren't there in Vue, so you can again go with the simplicity argument, and then you can of course make the other argument from Angular's perspective that it's more inclusive, it's designed to be for enterprise level development, right? And still have that subjective discussion, which one is simpler. But at the end of the day, they are both templating solutions trying to solve the SPA problem in almost the exact same way. And if we just think about that for a moment, so if the solution that they are providing basically has the same benefits and a lot of the same limitations, then why would I pick Vue over Angular? Because just think about it. Angular has basically as much job relevancy as React, which has arguably the highest job relevancy, but they are very, very close. Vue is not even in the same. It's not even in the same dimension of job relevancy as the other two. So if you pick Vue, if you focus on Vue as a developer, you are making a conscious decision that you enjoy working in Vue so much, for like, even though Angular is almost identical in its approach to solving the SPA problem, but you are literally picking Vue at the cost of work and job relevancy, because the differences between the adoption rates is actually that big. And I've actually, you can go out and check on the job markets and have a look. It might be different for your region, but I've checked this out fairly. I thought I did a fairly extensive look at this. And that's kind of the thing, because some people will argue that Vue has a lot of more stars on GitHub and things of this nature. And sure, that is true, but stars does not equal work relevancy. And although it's a very impressive, in my world, it's an extremely impressive achievement for something that it doesn't have the backing of a multi-million-dollar enterprise to actually be able to do something like this, to be able to at least to kind of be considered to at least be in the same sort of ballpark as these tools. It doesn't really matter in my world, because if somebody's going to ask me, okay, I'm going to build something with one of the SBA frameworks, am I going to pick the thing that has the least amount of work relevancy, with the least likelihood of finding people to actually be able to work with it, that have real experience and has the least amount of support in comparison to something that has a very well supported ecosystem and a gigantic corporation behind it, so basically developing feature and maintaining the project over time, and also of course pushing more learning resources than for Vue to kind of keep that platform relevant. Maybe if I was into the sort of political discussions that some people have on the internet and how people are kind of scared of big IT taking over and controlling the market too much, I would have considered something like that. But from just a business perspective, it doesn't really make all that much sense. So what I want you to take away from this is that for me, the choice between Vue, or rather like the way I feel about Vue, is that it's to me equivalent to picking Angular. I really don't see the benefits of picking Vue over Angular. I can't, maybe it's my limited understanding, but from everything I can see, they approach the problem in pretty much the same way. It's a templating solution, and they have pretty much the same tools, where Angular has a few additions. So maybe Vue can be considered to be a little bit easier to work with or more performant. I don't know. These sorts of things doesn't really matter all that much when you work on larger projects. Scalability and maintainability is much more important at those in larger projects. And apart from that, it has the lowest work relevancy of all of the frameworks. So in my world, picking Vue is a conscious decision where you like the tool enough so that you will ignore just the other. You literally need to like this so much that you want to reduce your likelihood of getting a job within the industry, because that's how much you enjoy that framework. It's very similar to today picking Ember or Elm as your primary focus as a front-end developer. You can use these. There are jobs out there, but not as many as the more popular frameworks. So in my world, it seems to be almost an emotional decision rather than a logical one. Have a great day.